Hello and welcome to Louise Singleton Creations. In today's video I will be casting jars with Aqua Cast Eco Resin, and then I will be engraving them using my new RA2 Pro Rotary attachment with my xTool F1. When I first got my xTool F1 laser engraver, I was hooked immediately. I loved the versatility of it, and when I discovered that I could engrave Aqua Cast, I loved it even more. So much so that I really felt the need to get the RA2 Pro Rotary attachment so that I could engrave my Aqua Cast jars. Well, now I have it, let's put it to the test. And before we go any further, I would like to pre-warn you, if you're sensitive to flashing lights or the strobe light effect, this video will be containing flashing lights. So I just wanted to let you know about that. Other than that, if today's projects sound like fun to you, stay tuned and enjoy the video. In order to be able to demonstrate the laser engraving today, I needed to make 4 jars. And to make those jars, I will be using Aqua Cast water-based eco resin from Elichem Resins. Here I have my jar mould, and in order to be able to keep its shape, I found a lid from one of my pots of pigments that fits inside it perfectly, and that really helps it to keep round so that I can make sure the lid will fit when it's finished. So my regular viewers will know all about Aqua Cast Eco Resin because I use it in my videos a lot. But I do appreciate that I might have some new viewers for this video who have come along because they're interested in the laser engraving side of things. So while I'm weighing my water and powder and giving it a good mix, let me give you a little bit of an overview of what Aqua Cast is and how it can be used. Aqua Cast is an environmentally friendly fusion of powder and polymer which only needs the addition of water to make beautiful homeware. Cured Aqua Cast pieces have high surface hardness and strength. They're smooth and they have an impact resistant surface. Aqua Cast has Class 1 fire protection, which is awesome because it means you can use it to make candle vessels. And when it's sealed, it has a high degree of weather resistance, so it's great for external applications too. But my favourite feature is the way it accepts pigment. Unlike with plaster of Paris, you can get deep, rich colours by using pigments which are specially designed for eco resins. But you can also get beautiful pale pastel effects using mica powders and other pigments too. The pigments I tend to use the most are the pigments from Homeware Design on Etsy, and they're a liquid pigment for eco resins. Okay then, let's get on with explaining what's going on your screens. I had previously filled my moulds with water whilst weighing them at the same time, and I used that weight in the Aqua Cast calculator on Elichem's website to find out exactly how much water and powder I would need. And so I measured those out, gave them a really good mix, and it's very easy to mix, by the way. Aqua Cast is so easy to mix. Anyway, I gave it a good mix and then I've started applying it into the moulds. I'm giving the mould a good squeeze around the edges. The lid for this jar has a ridge around it which you can't see at the moment, but there's a ridge in there, so I was giving it a good squeeze around that area to make sure there were no pockets of air trapped. So you've just seen me making my lid with white Aqua Cast. In actual fact, I didn't even end up using that lid because I decided that brown lids looked much better on the finished pieces. So I made a brown one for this particular pot, but never mind, it doesn't matter. The process is still the same. Let's add some pigment to my leftover Aqua Cast ready to make the jar. For this one I'm using Avo, which is short I think for avocado, because it is like an avocado green, and it's my favourite of all my pigments from Homeware Design. I just kept adding a little bit at a time until I got the shade that I wanted. And once it was thoroughly mixed in, I started adding it to my jar mould. By the way, this mould is from Amazon, and I will leave a link to it if it's available in your country. I got mine from the UK Amazon store, but I will have a look for other links as well for different countries, so just check my video description. You'll also get links to everything else that you see me using, along with discount codes. When you're filling moulds, it's best to do it a little bit at a time and keep patting the sides, squeezing it if you can to release any pockets of air or air bubbles which are trapped within the solution. It's hard to get it completely bubble free, but you can make it as pretty good really, as long as you keep tapping the table to vibrate it, tap the sides of the mould, all those things. You can vibrate it with a vibrating plate, or I like to use my air compressor, which I just take off from my pressure pot and I put my air compressor next to the levelling table, which it's on at the moment, and it vibrates it, and it just, helps those bubbles to come to the top while it's curing. So now you've seen me make one, you don't need to see me making the other three, so I can just tell you what I did. I made another one in exactly the same way, but this time I used duck egg blue, and then I made one that was more of a autumnal colour. It's Autumn Harvest, the colour I used for the next one, and then I made one using Aqua Cast texture. And I am going to show you a bit of the making of this one because it was very different. As its name suggests, Aqua Cast texture is very textured. As you can see while I'm mixing this up, it's very thick and gritty. But when it comes out of the mould, it's very smooth and almost shiny. It's got a beautiful look to it when it comes out of the mould. And if you look close up, it has a visual texture too. But the great thing about Aqua Cast texture is that it can be acid etched, it can be sanded, or it can be laser engraved, as you will see later, to create an absolutely amazing texture. Right then, we all love a little bit of demoulding, so let's demould the first one that I made. So the mould I'm using today is quite a simple mould. I wanted something straight-sided to make this first video using my rotary tool nice and easy. I will go into more complex shapes in future videos, but I just wanted to keep this video simple. That's why I chose a smooth, straight-sided jar mould. So that looks beautiful already, and the colour looks quite pale. I kept it pale for a reason. I'm going to be waxing this, and when you wax it, the colour darkens. So it's best to make your piece a little bit lighter than you actually want it. So with the lid, as you can see, the top of the lid is where the opening of the mould was, where I poured it, which isn't ideal. I prefer it when lids for moulds for lids are the other way up, so that you get the shiny side at the top. But it doesn't matter because you can sand it, and I'm going to be showing you that next. But before I do that, let me just show you the Aqua Cast texture jar. Now it's out of the mould, and it's hard to show you the texture that you can see in there, but it's kind of a speckled effect, and yeah, it was hard to capture on camera, but hopefully you could see. So to sand any rough bits like the top of the lid and the base of the pot, I use wet sandpaper. I'm starting off here with a 60 grit sanding block, giving it a good sand, and then once that was done, I used a 180 grit wet sanding block to smooth it out. And after that, it was quite nice and smooth. You can go on with even finer and, keep making it even smoother and shinier, but I was happy with the result I got and I left it there. Once all my jar lids and bases were sanded, I did leave them until the next day to dry out before waxing them. And the reason I'm waxing them before engraving them is because I had a plan. And my plan was, after they were engraved, I wanted to cover them with paint and wipe the paint off. And if they're waxed, the paint will wipe off the waxed unengraved area and stay there on the engraved area, which will be a nice easy way of colouring the engraved area. So that's why I'm waxing them now. And it's best if you can do 2 layers of wax to make sure that that paint comes off nicely. There was one that you will see later on where I forgot to do 2 layers and the result wasn't as good. So yeah, it's definitely best to do 2 layers of wax. The wax I'm using here is a food grade wax, which I'm trying out for the first time, called xTool. I'll leave a link in the description. I usually use Clark's wax for stone and concrete, which I really love, but I just fancied trying something else out just to see what it was like. And yeah, both waxes are great and food safe. They're 100% natural. So if you wanted to put food in your jar, once it's sealed a couple of times, it will be fine. And I'm just sensing your raised eyebrows, so I'm going to elaborate on that one. When I say putting food in it, I mean dry food. Like for instance, one of my jars will have dog biscuits in it. I use a Aqua Cast jar for sugar as well, and I use one for salt. So yeah, things like that. I don't mean things for eating your dinner out of. So now you'll be able to see what I was saying before about the wax making the Aqua Cast darker. You can very clearly see it here, can't you? The colour really comes out nicely when you wax it. So now you know about Aqua Cast and you know how I made my jars. Let's get on with some laser engraving. So here I am in the xTool Creative Space app on my iPad. And I'm just using some images that are already supplied within the app to make my design. For my first jar, I decided to use the chuck on the rotary tool, and to do that you need to measure the perimeter of the jar and put the number in there. As you can see, it's 257 millimeters. Next, I went to the Basics Shapes library and chose a square, and I changed the dimensions of the square to fit exactly the dimensions of my jar. I knew that the perimeter was 257 millimeters and the height that I wanted my design to be was 70 millimeters. The jar is actually 90 millimeters, but for this particular jar, I didn't want the design to go all the way to the top. So once I had my rectangle to the correct size, I was able to fit my designs in there and I would know that they would fit the jar. Then after I had all my designs in there and I had them the size that I wanted, I could delete that rectangle because it was just there as a guide. So here are the settings that I used for all my jars. It's the blue light, 100% power, 50 speed, 1 pass, 100 lines per centimetre. Okay, before I do any engraving, I'll just quickly show you how the chuck works, because that's what I'm going to be using on my first jar. My first jar actually won't be the jar you can see. I'm just demonstrating with this particular jar as it happens. So basically, to keep it very simple, because I'm not an expert at all of this, you just put the jar in place and tighten it with the chuck key. How's that for a technical description? And then you put it in place, as you can see there. Now, when you see me doing my first engraving, I did use it the other way around, which really isn't the correct way. This is the correct way to have it positioned. It's all on the right hand side and lined up to the lines on the machine, which you will see a bit more later on. There, I'm just focusing it. But anyway, yeah, on the first engraving that you're going to see, I put it the other way around, and that was simply for the video so that you could see the image rolling towards you. The way it is, the image rolls backwards, and it's not very interesting for a video. So yeah, here, look, here's the one that you're going to see first. And I've got it on the wrong side. It can be used that way around, but it's not designed to be used that way around. Like I say, I just wanted you to see the image as it came, but funnily enough, you don't really see it very much. So, it was a waste of time making that change, wasn't it? So after this one, I had a go with the rollers, because the one thing I'm not keen on with the chuck is that you can't pull the protective screen down to protect your eyes, and you have to wear your glasses. But with the rollers, you can bring the screen down most of the way. Anyway, we'll go back to that soon. Let me show you what I did with this first one. The lighting is poor on this first one, but trust me, everything's going to get so much better. So I don't know if you could tell, but the engraving didn't come out very clean looking, and I think that was because of the 2 layers of wax that were on there. But it doesn't matter, because I'm going to be painting it anyway. That was always the plan, so I wasn't too worried about the dark marks on the engraving. I'm using Deco Art Extreme Sheen acrylic paint here. It's a gold one, and all I'm going to do is paint it on and wipe it off just with a baby wipe, because that's what I had handy, but you could use a damp cloth, and it is so easy, and oh my word, it is so satisfying. Just look at that. Talk about transformation. That has got to be yeah, that's I'm lost for words, even though I knew what was going to happen. But the transformation and just the ease of wiping off that paint is something else, isn't it? Absolutely amazing. And in my future jars that you're going to see very soon, I realised I could just use a big fat brush, so yeah, it was a lot quicker. But yeah, I was so happy with the results of this first one. After that, I was hooked on this technique. After doing my first one on the chuck, I decided to have a go with the rollers. So I unscrewed the chuck, it's just 2 screws, it's very easy, and put the rollers back onto the base. When you first unbox it, the rollers are on the base, but you can detach them very easily if you want to put the chuck on. So my rollers are back, there's the chuck taken off, and then all I need to do is put my roller in position under the xTool F1 and plug it in. I took my removable base plate out of the xTool F1 and placed it beside it, and then there was a solid level surface for the roller to sit on. Then I needed to line it up with the 2 marks at the front of the xTool F1. And here's a close-up of the 2 guide marks that I was talking about. There are more guide marks on there for if you have your rollers in a different position, because you can put them closer together, in which case you need to change your position. Next, I put my pot into place on the rollers, and then all I needed to do after plugging it in, because I'd forgotten, was focus the laser. And you just turn the knob left or right and it moves it up or down. When the 2 dots meet, you know it's focused. Next, you press the framing option either on your device or on the machine itself, and it will show you where your image is going to be placed. And if it's not quite right, you can move your pot until the blue line is showing the position that you need on the pot, if that makes sense. But as you can see, it's quite clear there. Then I just pulled the screen down so it was just above the rollers and I was ready to go. And yeah, I do prefer this way of doing it. The chuck has its uses for sure, but I prefer the rollers. And here it is engraving, and it's the same image again because I loved it so much. But to make it a bit different, this time I made it larger. Now, what I could see at this stage was that it hadn't been positioned quite right, and there was a gap at the bottom, and also the bottom of the image was a bit uneven. So what I decided to do was do a strip of white just along the bottom to fill up that space, because it's all going to be painted over, but I wanted it to be the engraved white background, the same as the rest. And here's just a screenshot of the rectangle I made in Creative Space. So yeah, it's a nice easy way of just tidying up the bottom if you need to. So here it is, all engraved and beautiful and ready for some more painting. This time I wanted more of a bronzy colour and I didn't have a bronze paint, so I mixed some brown acrylic paint with some of the gold that I used last time and painted it on, this time with a nice thick brush. You do need to be quite quick and do it in sections, because if you did the whole thing, by the time you got to wiping the paint off, it could have started to dry on the bit that you don't want the paint. So yeah, just do it in small sections so the paint hasn't got time to dry on that negative space. But look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? I love that dark brown colour with the blue. Sometimes you'll get some patches of paint left over that are a little bit more stubborn to remove, but they do come off if you just give it a little bit more of a rub. And what I did find was I had a magic eraser, and with one of my pots where there was a particularly stubborn part that didn't want to just wipe off easily, I just rubbed it with the magic eraser and it took the excess paint off. But mostly it's very simple, very easy, but yeah, it can happen, especially if there's just a place on the pot that you've missed when you've been waxing and it's not been quite so thorough. But yeah, I think it is absolutely gorgeous and I couldn't wait to get on with the next one. So this next one is going to be an ammonite fossil design, and this one's going on the Aqua Cast texture pot. So I found this design on Canva, and they have loads of designs on there, and I do have the membership with them, so I've got quite a lot to choose from. So I saved my image on Canva as a JPEG, and then I went over to another website called Convertio, where you can convert your JPEG images to SVG files, and it's so quick and easy. So then I repeated the setup in just the same way as before, and it was done. Actually, I make it sound like it was quick, don't I? Everything you're seeing that's on the the engraving that you're seeing is time-lapsed, and it wasn't as quick as it looks. Each one took at least an hour. So, well, apart from the lids, which you'll see soon, they didn't take an hour, but each of the jars did probably take around an hour or more. And with this one, I liked it so much just the way it was. I was unsure whether to paint it, but well, I was kind of hooked on the whole process, so I went for it. I used the gold again and then wiped it away. This time though, it was a little bit more tricky because it's the Aqua Cast texture that I've used, and the engraving is far more textured and not as smooth as the other ones. So yeah, it felt a lot rougher under that baby wipe, and a lot of the fibres from the baby wipe did get caught, so it just took a little bit more attention, but the finished result is just stunning. We're almost ready for the finishing touches, and what I like to put on the bottom is my name and logo on a little stainless steel disc, which I also engraved on the F1. I cut out some adhesive cork on my Cricut using the rotary blade. I find that's the best way to cut it on the Cricut, with the rotary blade on the denim settings. So I've got my discs to go on the bottom with a hole in the middle for my metal piece to go in the middle. And so yeah, I just stuck that on and then used some E6000 glue to stick the metal into the middle, and the base was finished, and I think it adds a really cool finishing touch. It just makes it look so much more professional. And I've just noticed that the camera angle makes it look like it's really not in the middle, but it really was. It was central, it's just the camera angle. But look at that lid, isn't it gorgeous? Now, the mould for these jars came with 5 silicone sealing rings to put on the lid. But now I want some more, and I don't know how to find those. I've looked, and yeah, I don't know. If anyone does know where to get the replacement sealing rings, please let me know, because I want to make more of these jars. So there we have it, my finished fossil jar, and I think my favourite part is the lid, but yeah, absolutely gorgeous. So everything is now finally complete. There was a lot of work that went into this video, but I had so much fun in the process and I learned a lot. And if I have tempted you to purchase anything I've used in the video, please do use my link in the video description, because I will get a commission at no extra cost to you, but it helps me so much, more than you will ever know.